Hello. Today we will be discussing the story of a young child that was forced to live between two worlds. His name was Johnny, and every day he was forced to choose between the American world and the Mayan world, two very distinct realms. He first spoke Mayan. His first word was Chiich, or grandmother, because she, Mama Victoria, as he now calls her, was his primary caregiver. He felt most comfortable with her and all her prayers to the syncretic God she believed in, thanking him for blessing her great-granddaughter with a healthy son. Originally, Mayans believed in Kinich Ahua, or the sun god, but after the Spanish invasion, Mayans were forced into following the Catholic faith and believing in only one God. While the mother is recovering, the mother would only be bothered when the child needs to breastfeed, and everything else would be taken care of by the other women in the household. As Johnny's mother, Jasmine, recovered, his father, Abraham, his great-grandfather, Pedro, and his grandfather, Cesar, all went down to the cornfields so Abraham could be given an acre of land. The purpose of the great-grandfather giving Abraham an acre of land was to test his ability as a farmer, because in the Mayan culture, if you're a good farmer, you're a good man. The great-grandfather purposely gave Abraham the most infertile acre of land that he had to test his ability as a farmer. If Abraham could successfully grow corn, or nal, in the acre of land he was given, then that meant that the gods Totobu would bless him and his family for the rest of his life. The giving of the land was also symbolic of the great-grandfather accepting Abraham into his family. There was already evidence of two divided worlds because Johnny, his mother, his great-grandmother, and his grandmother were all living in the United States, while all the men in the family were tending the cornfields in the Yucatan. However, Abraham could not tend to the acre of land he was given and prove that he is a good farmer because his dream was to move to the United States. The great-grandparents were very uncomfortable with the idea that a young couple was going to move to the United States by themselves. They questioned who's going to take care of the newborn child. But nevertheless, the great-grandparents moved back to the Yucatan after the child turned 1. After only a year, Johnny and his parents learned many new Mayan traditions. Next, Johnny learned Spanish because his new primary caregiver, his mother, only spoke Spanish. However, Johnny did not want to speak Spanish. He only wanted to speak Mayan, and he only responded in Mayan. Johnny's refusal to adopt a new language exemplifies Emerson's belief that children transcend because they only follow their true nature. As Johnny grew up, he routinely spoke to his great-grandmother every Sunday afternoon so she could tell him how much she loves him. A typical conversation would go like this. In Chich ma in tulkulkech. Grandmother, I miss you. In Wabi, bishanikech. Son, how are you? Malo tushtech. Good, you? Malo. Hachta inyankuns mechka akte. I love you, and we'll talk later. Although he was only 4 years old, his Mayan was clear and understandable, whereas his Spanish was broken and he knew zero English. Johnny's knowledge of the English language dramatically changed when he entered the 3rd grade because in preschool through 2nd grade there were bilingual classes, but starting in 3rd grade the classes were only in English. So at school he was forced to speak only English. Language was the first instance where Johnny began to be confused by his parents because they asked him to speak the best English that he could at school so his American friends don't make fun of him. But at home, they commanded him to only speak Spanish. And whenever he spoke to his grandmother, he had to speak in Mayan because that's the only language his great-grandmother knew. High school has been the hardest time in Johnny's life because he went to a school where he was surrounded by Caucasian students who were comfortable with their Americanness. His great-grandparents were now pressuring him into more masculine responsibilities such as getting a job and starting to pay rent. His parents were pressuring him to get good grades so he can go to a good college. All the while, he was trying to figure out who he is. His dean once told him, high school is a place where people are trying to figure out who they want to be. Before Branson, Johnny was able to be an American student at school, a Mexican-American son at home, and a perfect Mayan child in the eyes of his great-grandparents. His identities were identities that were given to him by other people. He didn't have his own identity. However, at Branson, Johnny began to question if he is really American, Mayan, or Mayan-American, or none. At certain points, Johnny felt very American. He was studying American history, he hung out with American teenagers, he saw American movies, he read American books, and most importantly, he felt that he was following his own American dream that only Americans have access to. When he goes home, his house has a yard and a white picket fence, the typical image of an American house. His parents bought that house because they wanted to be American. They wanted his son to live an American life. Although the house looks very American on the outside, his parents couldn't help but decorate the inside of the house with traditional Mayan objects. But whenever he goes to his native home, he doesn't fit in. His family is immediately labeled as the American family. In his native home, the air doesn't feel right to Johnny. The air seems heavier. It's harder to breathe. Johnny's heart feels at home while his brain feels disoriented. He feels like he knows the place, but he feels he doesn't belong to the place. He always found it ridiculous that people labeled his family as the American family because his family wasn't American. Every day, his family eats traditional Mayan foods that Americans will never ever try. His house smells like the scent of cilantro and other herbs. And in every corner of the house, there is a Mayan artifact that reminds him that he is Mayan. Before he even has a chance to show his Mayan community in Mexico that he is Mayan, he understands Mayan culture, he is labeled. He is labeled as American, and he cannot show his true identity because people have already labeled him. Likewise, at school, Johnny is labeled as Mexican before he has a chance to show them that he identifies himself as a Mayan or as an American. When he goes to his American house, his mother has already prepared a traditional Mayan meal, just like his grandma makes. And he has endless conversations with Cheech about how he should get a job, become more responsible, take care of his mother, and do more masculine activities. However, his grandmother doesn't understand how different life in the United States is, and how hard Johnny has tried to make a syncretic Mayan-American culture of his own. She just believes that he should follow his Mayan culture to the letter and be a perfect Mayan man. Likewise, most Americans can't differentiate between Mayans and Mexicans. They believe that life is the same and traditions are the same. No one ever gives Johnny a chance to identify himself before he is labeled Mexican, American, Mayan. He never has the choice. He's always labeled. There is no room in the world for him to say he is Mayan-American